Hey, good morning, y'all. Happy Monday. Joshua Severe Weather. I hope you had a great Mother's Day and a wonderful weekend. It is the 15th of May. We're now starting to look at the tropics. We're still talking about some severe weather, some flooding. So, still an active time. Although, the good news I have for most of you watching me today is that the threat for organized severe weather has come down some this upcoming week. The reason why is we're seeing kind of more of a block setup like we saw a couple of weeks ago, but that doesn't mean we are out of the woods for any kind of rough weather. Flash flooding certainly still going to be a problem for some of us here in the southern and central parts of the country. So let me share my screen with you. I'm also going to take a look at least some speculation of what could happen in the tropics. I'm going to get more to this kind of in the second part of the video. I want to kind of cover the next couple of days first, but something to keep an eye on here off the southeast coast as we get later into the week. And I'm going to talk about the potential for something to maybe get going here, but still that's a ways off. So let's take a look at what's going on now. And here is our region of high pressure over the southeast. Where I live here in Raleigh, we've gone since April 30th without rain. So the first 15 days of the month of May, completely rain free. I know other neighborhoods in the Triangle have seen some rain. We have not. So we're to that time of the year where rain can be a little bit unpredictable, where some places can get quite a bit, others can just miss out completely. And the grass is still growing, so right now I'm okay with it, but I know we've certainly going to need to get some rain here pretty soon. Out west, we do have some interior west storms, some mainly dry lightning strikes, and it's been very warm out here. We had record highs yesterday in Oregon. We got into the mid 90s in many places, even all the way to the coast. So obviously any kind of lightning is going to cause potential issues with wildfires getting going here. I know Alberta, we've seen a lot of wildfires over the last several weeks, and obviously people's lives in danger across parts of Alberta, especially central and northern. And that smoke has gotten carried into New England and the Northeast over the last several days with all this fast flow aloft. And you can see a big trough moving off the New England coast. That's bringing the quick flow out of the northwest. That's a pretty dry flow. And with the lighter winds this morning, we have seen some pretty chilly temperatures over interior parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, the Northeast, and Southeast Canada. Once you get away from the bigger cities and bodies of water, we've seen some 20s and 30s. So not yet growing season yet for some here in the North Country. Now, as we head on into the next couple of days, we'll talk about some severe weather. It is certainly starting to get a bit quieter. No tornado reports over the last 24 hours. We have had some hail and some strong winds. Outside the St. Louis area into central parts of Illinois and southern Illinois, a little bit of severe weather as well across the interior of the West. But this is a quieter map than what we've seen over the last several days. If you go back to Saturday, you saw several tornadoes over parts of Iowa and Illinois, and back into Friday evening, quite a few across Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. So the trend has been for quieter weather overall. However, we are still going to have some severe weather to talk about. Let me show you the GFS model here from pivotalweather.com, and you will see we still have some storms to keep an eye on this afternoon. Low pressure tracking across southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. That is going to spread east and southeastward into a warm, unstable air mass tomorrow, and we could deal with some severe weather over parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama, and Georgia, even sneaking into southern West Virginia, Southwest Virginia, and even Western North Carolina later tomorrow. There is a slight risk out, which I'll show you all in a minute. As that front moves through, I will finally see rain in my backyard in Raleigh, at least I really hope, by Tuesday evening. And then that front sags south and it turns cooler. So Wednesday going to be unsettled in the southeast. Places like Savannah, Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, Columbia, all the way down to Pensacola will likely see some storms on Wednesday. And that low pressure system hangs out near the coast Wednesday night and Thursday, could continue to produce some unsettled weather, especially over South Georgia, Southeast Alabama, Northern Florida, maybe even over the low country of South Carolina, although some models have that out to sea. We're going to keep an eye on this low pressure system for some slow development. Right now, the models are not really indicating that's going to happen, and I'm going to show you guys why in a little bit. But we do have low pressure camping out near the coast. So either way, maybe not the best of beach weather here at the end of the week if you are planning to go to the North Carolina, South Carolina beaches. So keep an eye on it at this point. Not really forecasting any development, but I have seen surprises happen before. We did have that subtropical storm back in the middle of January off of the East Coast that moved up towards Nova Scotia. That was acknowledged finally by the National Hurricane Center a few days ago to be a subtropical storm. Could something like this happen again? Certainly. I mean, the waters are warm enough to support it, but the wind shear is what's going to be the variable here that could certainly lead to a difficulty for anything organized getting to go. Either way, I don't think it's going to be a big problem here for the East Coast. I think what we're seeing is something off the coast that maybe tries to sneak up into the Gulf of Maine and Nova Scotia next weekend. But it's going to get kicked out by the next storm, which is moving southeastward. This is not really a late May type pattern. It's a little bit more like an April pattern minus the tornado threat. We're just still dealing with blocking some chilly air over the eastern U.S. and very warm air over the Rockies and western parts of Canada. And even though the Pacific's going to cool off, the interior of the West is going to stay active. So this is not the kind of weather pattern you want to see if you want beautiful weekend weather across the Northeast. Or maybe even parts of northern Florida here, unfortunately. So a lot could still change, but nonetheless, we are going to be still pretty active here in the southeast and eventually in the northeast. Here's a look at our storm chances. A marginal risk for severe weather from southern Missouri on eastward towards Nashville later on tonight. Mainly a threat for some wind, but there could be some hail over parts of the Ozarks region here later today into this evening. But a more active day expected tomorrow. Across northeast Tennessee, southeast Kentucky, southwest Virginia, maybe getting to about Boone and Blowing Rock in the evening, and far southern parts of West Virginia. And this could expand farther east as well towards the evening. We are looking for the threat for a few tornadoes to form, including the Tri-Cities here, Johnson City, including Knoxville, La Follette, getting all the way up close to Lexington, maybe Pikeville, parts of Kentucky, close to maybe Bowling Green and areas just east of Nashville. So I do think we are in for a more active day tomorrow, as we do have an organized squall line that's going to move southeast through this region, and then quieter weather expected Wednesday. We're also going to see a lot of rain over the next couple of days. Texas remains wet, especially southwest of Houston, south of San Antonio, a very wet pattern today. We're also going to see heavy rain over the Central Plains. As we get into tomorrow, that threat for heavy rain does shift eastward into the Ohio Valley, into parts of West Virginia, including Charleston and Beckley. It gets down to the Tri-Cities, even close to not Chattanooga, but Knoxville and Athens, Tennessee, and maybe sneaking into the Carolinas later in the day. Kind of a marginal risk at this point, but there could be heavy rain. And then quieter weather expected on Wednesday, but we again see more active weather over the Rockies and Plains, and this rain is certainly needed, but some of it could be excessive here later in the day Thursday into the day Friday over the same spots that got hit here at the end of last week. You can see this is from the Weather Prediction Center. Total rain over the next 5 days, right through Friday night, Saturday morning. Pretty wet off the southeast coast. It could be pretty wet around Tallahassee and Bainbridge. We may be looking at 3 to 4, maybe 5 inches of rain anywhere from southern Colorado right through southeast Kansas, northern and central Oklahoma, southern Missouri, all the way into West Virginia and western Virginia, maybe even Richmond. And the peninsula and the northern neck here could see over a couple of inches of rain. So we definitely have that threat for heavy rain continuing. South Texas will stay wet and unsettled as well, with localized amounts of over 3 inches here around the coastal bend and to the south of San Antonio. The Northeast should be pretty dry overall through the end of the week. Then we get to the weekend. This next storm system over Ontario and the Northern Lakes is going to move east and affect you in the Northeast here, unfortunately, for this upcoming weekend. Excuse me. Allergy season here. All right, so here is a look at the upper level pattern and wind shear, and you can see not a ton of wind shear where our storms pop up today. But as we get into tomorrow, we do have bulk shear approaching 40 to 50 knots, which is enough wind shear to produce some pretty intense downdrafts, maybe a few tornadoes. There is some wind shear in here, but the area to watch is going to be eastern Tennessee and southeastern Kentucky for tornadoes to potentially form. We do get into some elevation here that could create some challenges with local wind shear as well. But this could continue on into southwestern Virginia, where wind shear from the ground up to 500 millibars gets over 40 knots. Not a great flow for widespread strong tornadoes, but certainly enough to support a tornado or two. This is going to move away on Wednesday and going to leave us with a better environment for at least not seeing widespread severe weather, but certainly we could still see some hail and some strong winds as that colder air aloft moves in here Wednesday into Thursday across the southeast. Here's a look at the European model, and we continue to see our active storm track over parts of the mid-south here over the next 24 hours. Then the southeast is going to get wet here into Wednesday and Thursday, and our front kind of camps out here near the Georgia-South Carolina border. Low pressure may form south of Hilton Head near Tybee Island here on Thursday morning. And that low is going to then head offshore. Could be a kind of a cloudy, wet day over the low country of South Carolina and Georgia here on Thursday. I personally hope not. I'm supposed to go to Hilton Head that day. And I don't want to deal with rain, but certainly it looks like that is a possibility. More active weather, though, over southern Georgia, northern Florida here on Thursday, and then over central and south Florida potentially by the end of the week. But it stays unsettled off the coast. So Wilmington, Southport, Myrtle, all looking at potentially an active weather pattern right on through the end of this week and beginning of the weekend until our next storm system comes in. The European is slower than the GFS. It actually draws the moisture from the waters off into the north and feeds that moisture up to the Delmarva and to Maryland, to eastern PA, and could produce widespread heavy rain across the I-95 corridor and the I-81 corridor here Saturday night before the front finally kicks it out here on Sunday. And then cooler weather returns Sunday night and Monday. Should be a nice but cool pattern here early the following week here, the 22nd and 23rd. All right, here's a look at the NAM model. And we are going to take a look at what's going to happen today, and not really a ton of rain expected in the mid-Atlantic. A few showers and storms may fire up, though, over Tennessee and southwestern Virginia, near to the west of Wytheville, it looks like here, and maybe up to about Princeton and Beckley. But as we get later into tonight, we see storms firing southward into Alabama, and some of these could have some locally heavy rain. And maybe locally strong wind. So if you're in Alabama, make sure you strap down the trampoline here as we do get some locally strong wind. But really the big deal is going to be tomorrow. We see storms firing in the afternoon hours tomorrow over parts of north central Kentucky. This is around 11 a.m. near Louisville, Elizabethtown, down to about Lexington. As we get to about 1 and 2 o'clock, that's when the NAM starts firing things off here. And that's when we have to start watching for severe weather. This is 3 in the afternoon. You can see storms near Lexington, Fayette, and then spreading southeastward. Here is 4 o'clock. We see storms popping over southwestern West Virginia, but middle and eastern Tennessee. When you get to about La Follette and up into the Cumberland Plateau here in the afternoon, that's where storms could produce widespread wind damage and large hail. Maximized around 5, 6 o'clock. You can see kind of this expansive area here where there's rotating updrafts that continues into West Virginia, and we see isolated supercells along this line right on down the I-75 corridor down to about Chattanooga and Lookout Mountain here around 6, 7 o'clock. And we could also see some severe weather over portions of central Virginia, near Lynchburg, and actually more towards, excuse me, more towards Appomattox and to the west and northwest of Richmond, getting into places like Goochland and Powhatan counties. These storms are going to move through the region around 8, 9 o'clock, and then they should start weakening, at least I hope, as we get to about 10 or 11. So once you're in the Triad and Charlotte, you see kind of a dying storms on the doorstep, maybe some heavy rain continuing over southeastern parts of Virginia and into the eastern shore counties here as well later in the evening tomorrow night. And then on Wednesday morning, it looks like most of this rain moves off the coast, and we'll have to watch for additional storms to fire up after that. Here's a closer look at the HRRR model. I'm mainly going to look at tomorrow, but we'll take a peek at today as well. Let me move this down for you guys to actually see. Sorry, my screen's a little bit weird. I want to zoom in and show you things, but then at the same time, I don't want to miss out. So here is later today and into this evening. We see the boot heel gets active. Southwestern Virginia or Kentucky gets active here with a few isolated stronger storms. In Tennessee, you could see a few heavy storms as well today if you're traveling I-40. But as we get into this evening, most of the activity heads north of I-40 and into western Kentucky. You've got kind of this first wave that looks like it's going to continue overnight as it moves towards the I-65 corridor and then towards I-75 here early tomorrow morning around Knoxville and up to Somerset and even up to Lexington, Kentucky. We get a break, and then we see more showers and storms tomorrow moving through Kentucky early in the afternoon, then into northwestern and middle Tennessee. And some of these could be locally intense. As we get to about 3 or 4 o'clock, I think that's our best chance at seeing a few tornadoes in this area here as that wind shear picks up. Remember, I showed you that bulk shear around 40, 50 knots. That certainly could support a few tornadoes here. And you can see the HRRR model tries to spit out some individual storms here. And if you pull up a sounding here, you see that there's at least some kind of wind shear. I mean, it is a bit marginal at this point, but as the winds increase aloft, there certainly is At least some tornado potential across this area as these storms continue off south and east. Maybe a bigger threat, though, for large hail. So be prepared for that. We could see 1-2 inch hail across this region. Even Johnson City could get in on the action around 7, 8 o'clock, and then things will sweep through after that. Missouri is going to be active later today in the southern half of the state. You can see I-44 could be pretty unsettled here around 5, 6 o'clock. Then Lake of the Ozarks, and then over towards the Boot Heel late this afternoon into the evening hours. A marginal risk for severe weather, then more showers and storms following that overnight tonight. And then things quiet down for the day tomorrow. Farther to the east, oops, I think I already showed you all this. And then farther to the south, that's what I meant to do. Over Oklahoma, we're still pretty active here. We've got instability in place. We have some heavier showers and storms. These are going to eventually move out of Oklahoma by the evening. We see unsettled weather over parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and of course, Texas. We're looking at more slow-moving storms here over South Texas, moving up towards the hill country later this afternoon, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. Houston may quiet down some according to the NAM model, but we're going to see additional storms firing along our boundary tomorrow. And these aren't going to move very quickly, so heavy rain certainly is still a concern for a lot of us here in Texas. But overall, Tuesday looks to be a bit quieter than what we had over the weekend. And finally, in the southeast, we see air mass heating of the day storms, mainly Alabama and Mississippi towards this evening. Additional storms over Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama tomorrow. Maybe a marginal risk could be posted for severe weather across this region and here, basically the central Gulf states. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Florida could see a few heavier storms as well, which could pulse up to be severe. But really, it looks like Wednesday is kind of a more active day. The European, as you guys can see here, basically air mass storms, nothing really too organized, but certainly there could be some heavier storms with strong winds and some microbursts here Wednesday afternoon. This low pressure system is going to spin off the coastline here of South Carolina into a pretty warm area, but it is going to be sheared by wind. And until we get high pressure to build into the northeast aloft, I don't think we're going to see a very likely chance that this organizes into anything more than maybe a coastal low and possibly a subtropical depression, but really it is not in the best place for something to form. So I know I teased you guys here at the beginning of the video because I wanted you to come in and take a look at it, but I want to also kind of put to bed the main concern for severe or for tropical development. I mean, the water is warm. It's above average here. We see temperatures off the Outer Banks and especially off the Mid-Atlantic that's above average. So, there is a chance. You're saying I'm telling you there's a chance. There is a chance, but we need a more favorable upper level pattern to get something to form. And you can see with the European, yes, we've got clusters off the coast. It's going to be wet in coastal North Carolina Thursday and Friday, but really at this point, it's going to be kind of far-fetched to get something tropical to form. We just don't see storms that are going to continue to maintain themselves over the center of this circulation. They're going to get sheared off to the east because our region of high pressure aloft is not there. We've got an approaching trough that brings stronger wind flow aloft, and that is going to effectively kill off any kind of organization. And you can see with the ensembles from weatherbell.com, we just don't really have a chance of anything tropical going. I'm not sure what's happening here off of Labrador, but we just don't see a high enough chance to post anything. But I am going to watch it for you all because I do think it's at least worth watching. I don't think it's necessarily the likely scenario, but here's your upper level pattern from the GFS, and you can see that trough in the northeast. And then the next trough comes down here, and this effectively is going to kill any kind of development. It's actually going to pick this up and draw that moisture up the coast. What we really need to see is a ridge like this in place over here to get anything tropical to get going, but we just have too much southwest flow aloft to really get anything rocking and rolling. Temperature anomalies this week, you're going to see those quite a bit here. It's going to be cooler than average in the Northeast and New England, warmer than average in the West with record highs starting to break down, but still continuing in British Columbia and Alberta. We see cooler weather moving down into the northern and central plains, and then we'll be much below average here on Saturday. So not a great outdoor day here with the cloud cover with the chance for rain, as next Saturday looks like it's going to be unsettled here, unfortunately. Finally, this is very noteworthy and a very bad situation. Cyclone Mocha intensified to a Category 5 with winds of 175 miles per hour. Rapid intensification here on Saturday over the Bay of Bengal. You can see the clearing of the eye. This is Myanmar. This is Bangladesh. The storm weakened slightly to Category 4 and made landfall in northwestern Bangladesh. It continues on into Bangladesh Myanmar producing very heavy rain. You can see this track here from zoom.earth. Category 5 in here, 175 miles per hour. This was locally Saturday evening, made landfall overnight Saturday night into Sunday morning with winds around 140 to 150 miles per hour, and then weakened significantly. And now it's just a remnant low over. But still, I mean, you're talking hurricane force winds about 200 miles inland here over northwestern Myanmar. So I've been trying to see news stories on it. Right now, communications are totally shut down. So the videos you see, the death toll you see, unfortunately, I don't think is going to end up being complete because there's no way of people in this area to communicate what's actually going on. But my thoughts and prayers go out to these folks. It really does sadden me to see any kind of storm of this magnitude affect a large populated area. We saw a storm in this area that took over 140,000 lives in 2007 or 9, I believe. And while I really pray that's not the case this time, certainly that is a concern of mine. So if you are the person that prays, then certainly keep these people in your mind, in your thoughts and prayers, because a very dangerous situation. I really appreciate y'all's time today. Please subscribe to my channel if you could. We're going to talk about that severe weather threat tomorrow. I'm going to keep an eye on the southeast offshore here to see what might happen, what we're going to be dealing with, and we'll talk about some heat as well across the west and chill in the northeast over the weekend. I want to give all the glory to God who allows me to do this every day. I feel like this is my calling as a Christian man. I just am here to share the weather with you all, but I'm also here to just discuss why I do what I do and the very reason I do it. And that's because God has given me the power to do so. He's called me to do so. Isaiah 40:29, he gives power to the weak. He increases the strength of him who has no might. And, when we see these devastating storms hit areas that are economically third world, that don't have really a lot of electricity, running water, places where you've got basically shacks get hit by cyclones. Just know that the Lord is still giving those folks power, even though they may seem to us as the world to be weak. He is increasing the strength of those folks who really have no might. And as somebody who wants to pray and to talk to God every day, I just know that those people are on my minds all the time. They may seem to be weak to us, but many are strong in their faith, whatever they believe, whether it be Islam, Christianity, or Buddhism. Either way, a lot of these people are people of strength, despite what we may see, and may God be with them. It's just a very tough situation to see it when you look at worldly situations, but know that the Lord has created all these folks as well, and he doesn't intend for them to suffer. He intends to strengthen them, and I hope that he strengthens you as well. So I wanted to just give you that word of encouragement, and I'm happy to pray for you if you are in need of that strength and that shield from the Lord, who has given us Jesus Christ to forgive us of our sins if we accept them. So I'm happy to pray for you, and I hope you have a great Monday. I'll chat with you all again in the morning. God bless you.